So let's push on with the program, and we're going to be hearing from a lot more young people who are doing amazing things in their space. Before that, though, I think we've got the outcome of the poll. Do we have that now, Wale?
Yes, we do, and I'm not sure why, but not too many people were able to participate. But I can just highlight the results. So again, the question was: getting TVET right is not cheap. We established that yesterday. How optimistic are you that enough investments will be made for resilient workers to be trained and be better prepared for disruption? Now, not surprisingly, we had 14% say they are not optimistic. Stakeholders don't appreciate the need to support TVET institutions. But then the bulk of respondents here were either moderately optimistic or optimistic. Now, we had 42% say they expect patches of investment, but far from enough. And then also 42% said they're optimistic and they see signs, but fingers crossed. But incidentally, no one was very optimistic. No one thinks stakeholders in their country get it yet. So I guess we continue to educate, we continue to engage until we get there.
We don't give up like Nelly and her mom. But yes, so we push on now while with the program. I'm about to host a fireside chat with the private sector and the youth. So yesterday we learned from one of the speakers around 73 million or so young people all around the world right now who don't have a job, according to some statistics from the World Bank. And also other statistics that did come out was just looking at the number of people who are unemployed as a whole, all age groupings, in excess of around 200 million or so. And just also looking at the fact that of those unemployed, a lot of employers were saying that 69% of them did not have the skills that they required in their workplace. So we know we have got a big problem when it does come to the skills mismatch. And we do know that if we don't make the right interventions and take the right actions today, the digital revolution and the green revolution, and also disruptions from economic uncertainties. Right now, we're looking at the Ukraine war. Tomorrow, we don't know what we'll be looking at. We know if we don't do the right things today, that a skills gap risks getting even bigger, which is problematic. So let's get into a discussion on perhaps how best to address it. And I'd like to introduce my panelists to you who will be joining in this Fireside chat. Beginning with Aya Chebbi. She's a Tunisian diplomat. She is the youngest diplomat of the African Union Commission Chairperson's Cabinet and is the first ever African Union Special Envoy on Youth. Wow, really big shoes you fill. How are you, Aya?
Awesome. I'm great. But that was my mandate. It ended in November 2021. Yes. And now I lead a platform called Nala Feminist Collective, and I hope to contribute to today's discussion. Really excited.
All right, wonderful. We're looking forward to that contribution, and I just love your attire. I think we've got matching earrings. Yours are more prominent in terms of the Africa, but we also have Okan Dursun. He's the co-founder of Twin Science, which is the world's first edtech company that combines science and technology, engineering and mathematics, so STEM, as it were, STEM learning with the SDGs, education for young people to raise the change makers of tomorrow. Good morning, Okan.
Good morning, everyone. I am really happy to be part of that amazing panel. I'm attending from Turkey, Istanbul. I'm really excited to, let's say, have a great conversation with all of you. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Excited to hear some of your thoughts. And last but not least, Nader Imani, who's Executive Vice President for Global Education at Festo, who are the founding partners of the LKDF. Good morning, sir.
Yes, hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here.
Sorry, I couldn't find anything on the web.
Apologies for that. Can you hear me, Nader?
Yes, I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I do. Loud and clear.
Very pleased to be here.
So we're going to get talking, but before we do, there's a poll actually to the audience that we want you to participate in, and it contributes to this fireside chat that we are about to have. And so the poll, you should be able to see it on your screen right now as attendees. It says, do you agree with the following sentence? I feel confident that the skills I currently have equip me for the future of work. And the answer options are strongly disagree, you disagree, you agree, or you strongly agree that the skills you have right now will equip you for the future of work. We'll get into the results and the outcome of that poll in just a short while, because there'll be another poll that is coming up. But to get to the discussion, Nader, just to begin with you, sir. So in terms of the skills mismatch, what is happening right now, what you are seeing it, what in your opinion are the must-have skills that young people should have, the must-have skills that you think would help narrow the skills gap presently?
Yes, thank you. I think what is very important, and maybe starting with attitude first, is about learning to learn, lifelong learning. And I think this is most crucial for everyone, every citizen around the globe. So the technology pace is so fast that we cannot afford just to learn once and then rely on this learning for the whole life. So I think that's the most important point. What comes second for me is after attitude is really the soft skills. And I think people talk about 21st century soft skills, but basically it's about communication, is about collaboration, is about the role of the individual that is having with his or her society. What is the give and take in between one person and the entire ecosystem which is going around, and how we do develop for each of us a feeling for us. And this is so important, that each person would see himself or herself as an entity. What is really also important, and I was just talking about the pace of technology changing, is about digital. And digital is coming in twofold. Is about digital learning, because it's part of our life now, but also it's about digital technologies. I think there is very seldom one profession that's not touching base that digital technology in the meantime. Any profession across is really touching the topics of that. And also what is important, to my opinion, is intercultural understanding. And also to that, it's also a topic of language. The more language, the better it would be. But also understanding for other culture. We are just facing and interacting with each other around the globe. So more understanding for each other's culture will also open. And the topic of resilience is also coming basically on trends, understanding on in which globe and in which world we are living. We are talking about global warming. We are talking about energy scarcity. We are talking about food security, urbanizations, and all that trends. There are really toppings or touching the way that we have to develop our skills. Yes, it will be very important for each of us to have an understanding on that. And we have been trying to embed it, all these different topics in certain number of activities that we have been having around the globe. In particular, one that I would like to mention here, a project that we have been developing together with UNIDO in Morocco. And this was about guarantee of access to water, fresh water and wastewater management. And this has been aligned with the 2050 hydraulic plan of the country. And I can really tell you, this is really working. It's not only providing job for all the cohorts that we have been taking on board, but also it's providing and securing technology for girls. 70% of our participants, they were girls. And this is a matter of pride for us to see technology is working for girls.
Certainly. And I think given the fact that for some reason, girls are not as active in the space right now as they should be. I mean, Nelly did highlight the fact that what she saw was, some traditional way of thinking, in the sense that girls need to be at home cleaning the house and taking care of business there, and boys at school learning about this technology. But we know that that is an equation that's not sustainable for the future, because it does risk widening this gender digital divide that is already in place. Aya, just your contribution here as a young diplomat and a former envoy of the AU. What are your hopes for the private sector's involvement in building and helping to build resilience for youth?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm super excited we're finally here. There's been mobilization for a month to get here, and to see so many young people part of the conversation, I think is extremely important. And I think that's what we're striving for, that there is this co-leadership, that it's not something skills for youth and jobs for youth. No, young people are not just seekers of jobs, but they are drivers of development and of jobs. I think for me, first of all, being resilient is about being innovative, turning every crisis or challenge into an opportunity. And the most resilient people I know are African youth, because I worked with young people in Africa for the past 12 years. And as you know, we have the largest population in the world. 65% of Africa is under the age of 30. And yet young people are the most marginalized, the most insecure and unemployed. And actually, you know, the stats that you gave are very striking, but also youth are 3 times more likely than adults to be unemployed worldwide. The resilience part is that they don't resign themselves to this reality and just give up to, you know, like we saw Nili's story, to just give up being trapped in poverty. They have agency, and they use their agency to innovate, and that's how they can be resilient. And I want to focus particularly on technology, because offline in our countries, we mostly didn't create the rules. We are products of systems created by others, whether they're colonial system, patriarchal systems, and we find ourselves operating in those systems. But in the digital space, it's different, because the online space empowered us when we did not have a voice offline. And the digital is where there is no visa and borders collapse, and where we can actually innovate, and everything becomes possible with our imagination. And I think that's why young people are really all migrating online, because there is space for there to be. I think the future private sector want is about monetary value. And the future we want to build is about freedom. And this is where the private sector really needs to understand in order to strengthen resilience. Young people want to create livelihoods for themselves. They want to acquire not only the skill, but the freedom, the space, the platform, the resources to use that skill. Because access to knowledge without access to opportunity become access to frustration. And we've seen young people on the street demanding job because they're frustrated. So I think the private sector really needs to provide opportunities for young people, because it's their responsibility. It's not the job of the government to create jobs. Government should create conditions and enabling environment and progressive policies for businesses to thrive. But private sector, this is your time. It's the time to invest in creating jobs, in upskilling, in increasing women entering the workforce. You know, as you rightfully said, we have striking stats of gender inequity. The annual share of women hired for leadership position is at 36%. That's unacceptable in 2022. So I think the private sector can do more than what they think their role is, and especially in critical time right now, where we were hit by pandemic, and when we now know better how to be resilient to the future, to climate change, to pandemic, future pandemics and epidemics. So I'm really hoping to see private sector step up, you know, to the role that they actually need to play.
Yeah, and I think that it. My colleague, in fact, the co-host Wale, is going to have a more in-depth conversation with the private sector a little later about exactly what you're saying. I mean, I like the point that you're making, in the sense that you say that the private sector can do more, and perhaps we'll hear a little bit later, you know, how much more. And how they can do that more. But also, as audience members listening in, feel free to weigh in, send through your comments. We do see them coming. And I think that Aya, you have given us the quote of the morning so far, in terms of access to knowledge without access to opportunity is access to frustration. I think I'm going to tweet that, in fact, after this session. Unfortunately, I can't multitask like that. But Okan, you you try and work with the private sector, and you're working in a field in which I think is deemed critical for all parts of the world right now. Not only the continent, you are working in the STEM field and marrying STEM and technology with the Sustainable Development Goals. So tell us a bit about how you do that and why you think that this link is so important to building resilience.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm super excited to have a great discussion about that side, because I think skills, especially for resilience, is really important for a future, for a better future, which we are currently built on together. Before I just jump what we are doing, how we started and why we are doing these STEM, let's say, education that combines with the Sustainable Development Goals, I would like to mention about a brief insights about the world, which brings new world for the kids right now. 40% of our existing jobs lost by automation in existing next 10 years. And only half of today's children can ready for that change. This is huge gap, actually. Huge gap for the skills, huge gap for the future careers of today's children, and huge gaps for the next generation of new jobs. The reason why we just do these things is just minimizing that gap for the future change makers, future engineers, future leaders for the upcoming world. What we are doing basically with Twin Science, our company, we are encouraging children with STEM skills, science, technology, engineering, math, by combining with the Sustainable Development Goals, sustainable environmental education. Because we have a global crisis right now, we are currently facing the results of that crisis. But if they learn the reason of these crises with the root causes, and they learn the technology behind the world, the autonomous systems, the technology they see on the street, they can combine them and change the world in the upcoming decades, in the upcoming generations. That is why we are doing these all assets. Current education system does not allow to make it happen right now. We are the results and products of that education system. And after 20,000, after science workshops, over 20,000 children, we observed that we need to add new approach to these educational system all around the world. And we believe that the education system should be double-winged. This is the new term. I know all of the audience and yourself as well. Let me just, let's say, explain more. What I mean by
double linked?
Double winged.
Got you.
Yeah.
Double winged. Got you.
One wing is including the competency, the technology, the know-how of the world. The other wing is including the compassion, the conscience, the heart of science, we are calling yes. Otherwise, it will damage the world. We are encouraging them to create a new and better future. That is why we are calling as double-winged. That is why we are all encouraging children with sustainable development goals in our STEM education and STEM lectures in our educational model. How we are doing this? We are providing online courses, animated videos, trivia questions, and some games for, let's say, green games. They can play and learn the concepts of SDGs in our mobile application. This is really easy to access, and they can just download it and just enjoy the journey we create for them. After they educate themselves about these problems and the, let's say, sustainable and environmental education, we are combining these concepts with STEM skills, robotics, coding, artificial intelligence, the skills they need to learn for future profession. Once they educate themselves, we are providing our own STEM skills, STEM kits, science kits, you can imagine like that, which they prototype their social and innovational projects by their hand. These are consist of electronic modules. They can just combine with them with each other. They are all compatible with Legos, so they can build their projects as they wish. This is how we are doing in the concepts of that. At the same time, we are providing a curriculum for good at the same time, so they can see the subjects they are seeing in the school and the real-time examples for the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and environmental education itself. So this is the way we are doing right now. We have reached over 1 million children all around the world. We started our journey from Turkey, and we have an office in London as well, United Kingdom. And we just opened our office in United States, and we are expanding globally to reach out more and more children all around the world. But we are also prioritizing to reach out more disadvantaged schools, disadvantaged population of the society as well. We started this with our Anatolian part of Turkey and continue to grow that project in the African side. We are providing the latest technology to the most disadvantaged society and population of the world to improve the impact in the long term, because this is really important. The target group of Twin is the age group of 5 to 14. I think this is the most important age group for the future decades. Once they learn these concepts, once they educate themselves about that, in the upcoming 10 years and 20 years, they will sitting on behalf of us for these forums, for these conferences, for these tables. They will be the decision makers. They will be the leaders of the future, so they can change the world in a good way once they educate themselves on that side. Before I just closing my, let's say, term on that question, I would like to say that, of course, we are facing a global crisis right now, but our past will not be our future. This is what I believe. And I really happy and hopeful about that. I just connected many young persons, even in the young leaders by United Nations. I have cohort of another 16 friend of mine. They are all working for good. They are all working to create better future. So that I believe that our past will not be future, and the future is in the safe hands. You can believe that. We will see how it will be good, how it will be really optimistic in the upcoming decades. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you. I think it's fantastic work that you are doing. And I think that there's this drive towards ESG. There is a understanding that the businesses that are going to win tomorrow are going to be the businesses that have a very strong social impact at their core, businesses that are able to successfully balance profit and planet and people, and not businesses that just take either facet in isolation. But thanks so much for that contribution. So we've got the outcome of the very first poll that we started the discussion with, and it was about the readiness, the feeling of having the correct skills, being equipped with the correct skills for the future of work. And I'm just going to read some of the results of the poll so far. It's interesting to learn that most people feel that I feel confident that the skills I currently have equip me for the future of work. So most people actually don't feel confident that the skills that they have equip them for the future. So 60% of people who responded, and thanks so much for the response of the attendees, don't feel confident that the current skills they have equip them for the future. I think that this also speaks, Okan, to what you were saying, just in terms of the fact that 40% of the jobs in the next decade will be lost to automation, and that in terms of young people being ready, only half of them are. But be not despaired. I think that this is what we're here for today, just looking at all these skills that will be required, sharpening the tools, and looking at all the role players who will have to play a role in ensuring that the skilling and the upskilling and the reskilling is done. I've got one more poll that I would like the audience members to participate in. Please, if you would indulge me with your participation. And it should be up on your screen right now. And it's asking, during the COVID-19 pandemic, did you feel that the skills you had were enough to find a job or improve your employment prospects? Again, 4 answers: strongly agree, you disagree, you agree, or you strongly disagree that the skills that you had during the COVID-19 pandemic were enough to improve your employment prospects. So as the audience members get to answering that question, I'd like to continue with our discussion, guys. Aya, just coming back to you. I mean, the point that you have been making about access, just as we're moving towards this twin transition and the rising skills mismatch that will be exacerbated potential by the digital and the green revolution if the interventions are not made today, and the fact that this will even further divide across gender lines between men and women. How do you think that the youth can potentially be part of the solution? I mean, you highlighted it before in the sense that a lot of young people were taking their future into their own hands. They were rising above the adversary and the setbacks. I mean, we heard from a young person earlier, Nelly, but just to amplify the message on how young people can be part of the solution, what else do you think they can do in your view?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I want to just first maybe really depict the picture of digital divide, because I think people just say digital divide and it sounds, yeah, it's a problem that we can fix. But digital divide is real and unfair, especially on the African continent. 70% of Africa's population is offline. It's only 30% of us, from Africa here who really have access. So if you look at, the number of people who have a phone, 460 million of us in Africa have a phone. Only 120 million have a phone that actually have the internet, and only 60 million of those have the internet. So from 460 million, we end up with 70% of us offline. And that is the reality that hasn't been changing for the past decades. And also the issue of electricity. 51% of Africans don't have access to electricity or reliable source of energy. So with no energy, there is no digitalization across sectors, and when we have COP27 coming up, and I think Africa's agenda should be leading, because it's the one that is suffering from this inequality. If we gender this conversation, young women and girls are out of the digital revolution, unfortunately. Boys are 2 times more likely to own a phone than a girl in low and middle income countries, and more likely to own even a smartphone. 1.2 billion girls suffer because of their age and gender, in addition to poverty and other discrimination like disability. So I think that's why those of us who have access also have the responsibility and opportunity to make a difference. The opportunity to innovate, the opportunity to create platforms, to bring the most vulnerable to the forefront of the conversation. That's what we do with Nala Feminist Collective. We bring together African women politicians, the youngest politicians, ministers, mayors, parliamentarians, with the most radical activists. Those change makers in the system and the change makers out of the system, because we need both. We need to rebuild trust with our institutions, and we need to work together. We can't afford to just continue this disconnect and this distrust. And I think we need to also make sure that young women make these decisions. So what we do is really to increase the number and influence of young women in decision-making tables, in boardrooms, in occupying parliamentary seats. Because it's not also enough to just have a seat at the table, right? And be a token. We need to make sure that when you are at the table, you do actually have the decision, you do actually have the influence. When you do consultations with young people, that they have feedback on what happened with their consultation, and it's not just extractive consultation, that we get information from you. I think we need to move to a world where we do have co-leadership with young people, and especially young women. We should go also beyond being inspired, and we should act on that inspiration. So we should support young women like Nelly and invest in socioeconomic power of girls, and not just see a story and be like, wow, she's doing amazing. But what are you doing to make that impact, to scale that impact? Because there are millions and millions of Nelly on the African continent who are innovating and who are changing their communities on the ground, and rising, as you said, rising above so much odds and hardships, as because of your age, because of your gender, and other layers. You can be a refugee, a displaced, a person with disability, and yet you find the solution, you act on it, you take a loan, and you do it. You just shake things up. And I think this is where private sector and other players in the room need to actually invest in socioeconomic power of women and girls, because we see the results. So it's not enough just to be inspired, but let's act on that.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that you make a very important point also as a young person, to not just be a token yourself. And I think that there's a responsibility for young people who do have a seat at the table to ensure that they use that to the benefit of those who are behind them. Essentially, throw it forward. But you did
pave the
mention
way. Yeah,
and pave the way. Yeah, and you did mention the vulnerable groups, the marginalized groups, those who've got it harder. Maybe people like Nelly, maybe people who are even worse off than Nelly and Nader. If I'm coming to you right now in terms of speaking to these people on how they can themselves start to develop the skills that's needed for the future world. And especially as you may be a young person right now and you've got this wonderful idea, but now you're contending with borrowing costs that are in the double digits, and to implement that idea, a system essentially that is set up to make it difficult for you to be an agent of change, as it were. What is your message to the vulnerable out there, the vulnerable groups in terms of development?
Fifi, you're breaking.
Yes.
Yeah, I also
Hi, Zach. Hi, apologies for that. It seems like my connection got disrupted. Am I back?
Maybe if you just repeat the last 15 seconds, it would be fine, or 10 seconds even.
All right, let's speed this up so the connection doesn't misbehave any further. Nader, we were talking about the message to the vulnerable groups in terms of skills development. How can they do what they can to increase their level of development and hopefully even throw it forward?
Okay, all right, thank you. Let me just, in order to answer your question, I would like to touch base on two topics that my fellow speakers, they just mentioned. I loved was what Okan mentioned, that really embracing SDGs as part of the education system. And this makes a very, let's say, responsible citizens around the world. We really bring not only economy, to flourishing, but also economy and ecology, but also societal topics. And this is so important that all these three topics are coming in harmony with each other. And I like that the pledging of Aya, that's with the private sector, that the private sector should not be sitting and waiting, but really take the destiny in their hands. Aya was mentioning that the private sector is creating the job and the government is creating the framework. But I would just say I would just go further than that. The private sector has to really define the skills that we want, the skills that private sector wants. And at the end, those are those youth that are going to take responsibility in the private sector and bring the private sectors along this SDG that Okan was mentioning. I think if I would was really, giving an advice to the youth right now, first of all, have access to digital learning. Aya was mentioning is borderless, is coming over the gender divide. So it is digital doesn't recognize gender. So, and this is fantastic. Also, yes, we do have access or problematics of being online and having access to the infrastructure that we do have in different continents, especially in Africa, as Aya was mentioning. But this is a topic that we all have also the responsibility to provide this, but also making sure that we are also having or accessing to the pool, so that we are really having understanding for the general tendencies that is going on. Access to electricity, huge possibility for the African continent. 650 million inhabitants in Africa do not have access to the electricity in their home, while at the same time there are major macro programs that are going. The Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia is going to provide electricity enough for the entire population of 100 million plus, but maybe even exporting. So again, how do we make sure that at the same time we bring the electricity from the grid to the house? And this is offering a lot of opportunities for the youth to really address what is really pulled and demanded by the labor market. And I do believe that in the meantime, there is plenty of different platforms, digital, but also hands-on possibilities, so that we can really bring the education as compact as possible, but also as meaningful as possible towards the demand of the societies. What is truly demanded by the labor market in Africa? And how can we adapt the adequation of education around this demand and make sure that people will have jobs? Of course, the private sector will have to play a very important role. And there are many, many examples that I can really put on that But I would love just to stop here because it will be no frame for mentioning so many examples.
Yeah, I'd love to hear them, but unfortunately, we also don't even have the time to hear them next time. Okay, perhaps you can finish us off then. In terms of the private sector, I mean, you have done what you've done with your partners, you're scaling things up. What's your message to the private sector to work with businesses like yourselves, other businesses like who are trying to do the same thing as you in terms of building a resilient skills set for the workers on this continent?
First of all, I can say that we are trying to change the world, right? We cannot do this alone. So we are so lucky, and I just would like to thank all of our partners to support our vision, to support our dream, to make it happen. Because it's a partnership, a ship of which partners are believing and going in the right direction, one direction together. We should believe in ourselves. We should discussing and deciding everything together. So the industrial revolution brings us today, and the technology itself, the world itself, in the, let's say, amazing point. But what I call as now is the cultural revolution will come. How we are doing with Twin, maybe I can just share some examples with our partners in the real-time one. Partners who have the know-how of the technology in the umbrella of STEM, of course, like Rolls-Royce, Ford, and Boeing. We are working together with these three brands. With Rolls-Royce, we are partner of their global STEM outreach program and developing a unique product with their know-how. Their team worked with us to develop a STEM kit to purpose of just sending these kids to the disadvantaged areas of the world to improve the STEM foundation of these group. Ford, we just developed Ford Turkish office with a Ford autonomous vehicle kit, which is a real prototype of the Ford F-Max version of truck. Children develop it from scratch, and with the R&D process to the field study process, we all work with the Ford AI team, artificial intelligence team. This is the introduction for the artificial intelligence know-how. Then with Boeing, we just developed an aviation kit, which helps and encourage children with the aviation concept with STEM. And all these kits also consist of sustainable and environmental education itself with the content we provide. So what I think is not only just supporting the projects by funding, they are also making their time with us, sharing their know-how to develop that project and sharing their energy as well, because we are visiting these fields together with their team, together with their members of the team. I think that creates another revolution of cultural transformation, because the educational and transformative education is really important. But when these partners contribute and being part of this project will bring another multiplier effect to change the world and understand the principles of technology and the crisis of the world today. That is why I think this is really important. And I just call all the private sector companies, which I know all of them, many of them just prioritizing these sustainability concepts by the agenda of 2030. We have a huge deadline to make it happen, to change the world, to solve these problems as soon as possible. I can call all of the private sectors and companies to support more these kind of projects, these kind of partnerships, to be part, not only by just, let's say, being part of as the name, by at the same time giving their know-how, giving their energy is really important. By ending my words, I can just say that there is a sentence I really like from Pablo Picasso: the meaning of life to find your gift, the purpose of life to give it away. All of the partners have the technology, have the know-how, but now is the time to giving that gift to all the world. Now is time to giving back to all technology they have right now. So that I just saying that now it's time to give back for communities and societies for better future. I'm just calling that message at the end. I'm really happy to be part of that, and thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for another wonderful quote there, quoting Picasso. Thanks to all of you. Dr. Nader, thank you so much. I mean, the purpose of this fireside chat was just to really get the conversation going and all the themes that will flesh out in a lot more detail later on throughout the program. So thanks so much to all of you for the contributions and giving us a lot on the table to discuss further.